All right. World is flat. This one has seen a couple of books. Friedman's written 2 versions. World is flat, and then World is flat 2.0. And a little different way of looking at things, but the same basic principles, having a little bit more to do with jobs than the money itself, having a little bit more to do with income generation than the finances of it, right? Having to do with how we collaborate and how the internet has changed, evolved the way that we can work with other people and work with each other and with other people. And then how the world has changed as a result of it. And this notion about flatness has to do with hierarchies, you know, the distance between owners and workers. And Friedman's idea goes a little bit with death of distance, is this idea that this is closed up a little bit because you have the means of production and distribution more in the hands of the people, to borrow Marx's term. Okay? And so, bless you. And so you have a little bit less disparity and a little more entrepreneurship. You have a little more distribution of work than you had before. And you certainly have a globalization of the workforce. And so you can share information widely and use software to manage that workflow so that you can out and then fill in the term source just about everything. Okay? You can outsource, insource, offshore. You can bring people into quick contact over work. And it's this digital environment that enables it. I could do an hour right now on what the feds what our guys are doing with virtual worlds, but the Defense Department, the Energy Department, a number of U.S. agencies are doing lots and lots of work with virtual worlds, because what they're finding is they can sort of throw their work across geographic boundaries in useful ways in virtual worlds, in ways that they can't by getting people on planes and sending them around the world. Okay, and so Flatner's joining the openings to dynamically illustrate the benefits of horizontal integration. The world loves it. Now, there are aspects for every individual nation that then don't love it so much. So for all the jobs we send overseas, you know, there's some folks who are not working here. Every time you pick up a customer service call to make one, and you get a guy in Singapore or Bangladesh instead of a guy in Chillicothe, you know, it worries you a little bit. Sometimes you can't communicate with them very well. Sometimes they don't know your situation very well. Sometimes they're not very well trained in your needs and wants, like the local person would, but they're working for $2 an hour, and the guys here get 8 to 10. In fact, they might be working for less than that. They might be working for 50 cents a day, and the guys here get 8 or 10. Okay. Now, you know, would you do the job for 8 or 10? I mean, sorry, for 50 cents a day? No. So, is it taking American jobs? Well, not really. Except, of course, you couldn't actually get anybody in America to do it for 50 cents a day. You'd have to pay them 8 for 10, so it does take American jobs. I mean, you know, I don't want to do a big immigration thing, but as the world gets flat, not everybody gets happy. Right? As the work gets moved around, not everybody is pleased about it. However, it does tend to give individual citizens more control, more power, more access to the process. You know, we've got hugely increasing numbers of telecommuters in this, all over the world, but in our country as well. Folks who no longer have to leave the home can, for whatever reason, just stay where they are. So they're saving gas, greenhouse stuff, you know, emissions, saving time, saving wear and tear on the vehicle, can still watch the children at home or do whatever they'd like at home and time shift their job and do what they're supposed to be doing for their employer, whoever it is. Huge benefits. On the other hand, they're isolated from their coworkers, so they don't have a sense of belonging to the company. We thought that that would be okay, but they don't feel right about it. And then there's the issue of how do you control them? Do you let them work whenever they want? Or do you... So, if you telecommuted, let's say you did your job at home rather than doing your job by going to a location someplace, does your company have more or less control over you? And let me add one more feature there. More or less control in the new media environment than it would have had before had you done the job as a telecommuting job before new media. Does your company have more or less control? Yeah?
I think you can make an argument for either case because you can work on your own time, but at the same time they can get a hold of you at any time.
Not only get a hold of you at any time, it's more than that. So before new media, I stay home and work. And my company, for whatever reason, lets me flex time. Right? They have no idea when I'm working on what I'm working on. The only thing they can judge is output. I turn it in. If it's good enough, I get to keep my job. I get to keep telecommuting. They have no idea how I did it, what time I spent on it, anything like that. If I telecommute with a company who's any good at all, they know what I'm doing. Every minute I'm working for them. Every minute my computer's on, I'm connected to their network. For example, if I work for Cisco, I can't do a lick of work for Cisco without getting on the Cisco network. They don't allow me to do any work without being on their network. Once I'm on their network, they know exactly what I'm doing at all times. There are companies that allowed telecommuting and then realized that they couldn't keep track of their people, so now they make the folks turn their webcams on because they want to watch them. And then they got a supervisor who's in an office who's watching telecommuters. We've got companies who let their people telecommute, but they force them to install software which tracks their keystrokes. So it's not everybody's more controlled that way, but it is this notion that it's not always freeing, right? But it is a mix of home and job that is increasing in usage. And if you look at it globally, it's a flattening process. One of the things we learned about computer-mediated communication is that it doesn't automatically flatten hierarchy. We thought it would. If you give everybody the means to communicate with everybody, we thought that sort of the difference between the guys at the top and the guys at the bottom would kind of flatten, and it'd all be sort of horizontal. Kind of didn't work out that way. On the one hand, I can communicate with more people. Right? I can participate more broadly across the enterprise. But you know what? I can also send the boss an email now that can get my butt fired so fast. Whereas before I would just gossip at the water cooler. And the only people who would hear about it would be my colleagues. And they wouldn't tell anybody. Right? But now, I click that send button and I sort of miscalculate what it is that I've said. It's like an ejection seat. I'm gone. And that doesn't flatten hierarchy at all. It almost accentuates it. In fact, before, my boss had no idea what the folks were saying. They were over there in the corner office. They'd come out, everybody goes, till Mr. Jones walks by. Now all they got to do is go on our Facebook pages. Find out what we're saying about the enterprise. Right? So it's not altogether flat. Okay? All right. Finally, the last